Now let's talk about tonight's theme. Like I said, tonight's theme is how can shortlets help you earn times three of your monthly income. To help us walk us through the numbers, the opportunities, the available properties. Most of us here, I'm sure that we are part of the people that were the first people to start our co-ownership journeys, our co-ownership properties. We had Ibudowura, we had Nov one that sold out. We have new properties on the platform now, on the app right now. So we have our CEO, Jose Maria. He's going to explain more about this for us. So please help me, join me, and welcome our CEO, Jose Maria, to walk us through Keble and the properties, the shorter properties we have on the platform, please.
A pleasure, pleasure. Thank you everyone for showing up. Really appreciate everyone taking out time on a Friday evening to sort of join us. One of the major reasons why we have these conversations at least every 2 weeks, or at least once a month, is one, to answer as much questions as you would like. I know that there are tons of questions that come up on a daily basis concerning our offerings. So I think this is a unique opportunity to ask them. The second is some things need, maybe you're trying to get as much information about a particular offering. This is the right platform to do so. I think the last thing is just to understand what Keble does. So like first time investors on the Keble platform, or people that are interested in real estate generally, this event is essentially focused on just trying to shed more light on some of those offerings and some of the things that is happening in the real estate space. Typically, I think the last session we had a lawyer come in and break down a lot of stuff, like in terms of documentations, legal requirements, things that typically you would have to pay a lawyer. On our end, we pay lawyers a lot of money, but that was given for free, within 1 hour. So I think these are events that are really focused on trying to shed more light on the real estate space, and hopefully allow everybody to have an informed mindset when picking certain assets on the platform or trying to get to know us a little bit better. Yeah. So like we said, right, the first thing you need to know about Keble is that our main mandate is to ensure that you own a slice of real estate across the globe, right? We've been doing this for roughly 6 years now. So we have a unique insight on picking certain locations that make sense and partnering with the right developers across various jurisdictions that allows us to sort of scale your portfolio. And we also have the right partners for in terms of security, like Axaman said, to make sure that your assets are insured. We've partnered with the likes of Mr. Africa to make sure that the assets have a huge pipeline of properties constantly being pumped out. And every single month, we are constantly reviewing properties that we think would be best suited for your portfolio. I think someone mentioned in the group chat the other day that, hey, like every single month there's something new on the Keble platform. Yes, it's something that we want to, every single month we want to make sure that there is something unique that you can also tap into to build your portfolio, right? So at the core of it, we are focused on allowing you to actually get into real estate, no matter how small. So yes, someone was asking the other day, like, what exactly is Keble? Like, what do we really do and offer it, right? The other thing that we also do, which is also unique, is that we break down that barrier. So even if you're going to meet a developer to say, oh, I want to buy these assets, they typically will not give you the same flexibility as we would give you on the platform. So there are individuals buying property worth 200 million for 300K every single month, right? Those things don't really exist within the structure of typical developers, right? But that's something that you can also experience on the Keble platform. So we try as much as we can to make it extremely easy, seamless, devoid of too much paperwork. Obviously, it's real estate, so there'll be a ton of paperwork. But we'll make sure that things are a little bit much more seamless for you as you go along your real estate journey. Going into the conversation of today, when people think of shortlets, they typically will look at hotels as a comparison to shortlets or motels or even vacation rentals. I typically would call it vacation rentals because the entire idea is to experience something other than what the hotel will provide for you, right? So a typical hotel would give you like, it's very straightforward. Like I pick a room, I pay for a night, and I leave the next day, right? The way vacation rentals are actually meant to be structured, and it's to give you an experience around your location. So you're not just staying in a house, but you're trying to experience the culture in that particular location. You're trying to do something quite unique that would make people come back again. So hotels typically would be like, we are just providing an accommodation. Vacation rentals and shortlets should be focused on, we are providing you not just accommodation, but we're providing you with an experience. We're providing you the experience that you can share with loved ones. So that's why you would see people, when people are going for a trip, they will say, okay, let's stay in shortlets or Airbnbs, because there is a good chance that whoever is hosting it will tell you more about the location, will tell you about the nearest spots around. You have that conversation on that front. There are more rooms to explore. So you see people that will do maybe a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom option, and they will share that space together. Or you're just looking for something different. But the whole idea is really focused on the experience, something unique that you can experience. Now, one of the things I always mention is people would say, oh, do you think the market in shortlets is saturated? And I always go back with the question is, do you think hotels is also a saturated business, right? I do think that there is a place in the market for hotels, and there's also a place in the market for shortlet, and both of them can thrive. And there are locations right now in Lagos, for example, there are certain locations that obviously are heavily, let's say, saturated with the shortlet space, but that doesn't mean that Lagos as a whole is saturated yet. There's a ton of space, especially on the mainland. There's a ton of space around areas like Alagomeji. I think we'll talk about that in a few minutes. There are areas like Ikeja that are still lacking shortlet spaces. You'll be surprised, like still like a very open market at this point in time. So I think that it's not saturated yet. I think there's still room for the market to grow. And I think one of the things that we'll talk about in this conversation is just what is the room looking like and how much can we really generate, right? The shortlet market has been on the rise, especially since 2020. One of the stories, if you guys are aware of Airbnb, like the founder of Airbnb, they're essentially the ones that they pioneered it to the mainstream markets, whereby like everyone knew about vacation rentals through Airbnb. It became more popular to stay in someone else's house, because essentially all the people that bought into some of our co-owned assets, that's your house, that's on, you're allowing a stranger to come into. So it was a very strange thing early on. It was not something that typically people would want to do in the first place. But it's become a norm at the moment, like similar to what you see in, Uber rides. Before, it would be weird for a stranger you would use an app to call a stranger. You stay in the stranger's car and that stranger will drive you, right? First of all, it's a strange app, it's a strange car. You've not seen this person before, right? And this is just a random person picking you up, and you completely trust the person to drive you to your destination. Those are strange things. But you can see technology has sort of made this possible for us to benefit from things like this. I think in the terms of what we're seeing in the shortlet space, 2020 was a year of resilience. I can remember our first ever project in Keble was actually a shortlet property, right? And it was located here in Yaba around Yaba, Onike side here, if people are aware of that. And the whole deal was structured in such a way that I think we were meant to generate over 60% returns in that deal. And it was just for a 12 months timeline, right? Now that deal was an equity deal. We were one of the sole owners of that asset. And the way it was structured was that we were providing refurbishing financing for the asset. So the developer just needed cash to pimp the whole place out, make sure that the place is nicer, look at the rooms here, look at the table. We're the ones in charge of like financing that whole process. And midway into like the deployment of the capital, COVID came in, right? And everywhere was locked out. Essentially, no one could go out at that point in time. So construction even halted for like a month before we renewed. Afterwards, everybody started coming out. And we were so scared of that deal because one of the things was that, like, would someone during a COVID period, would someone leave their house and go to a stranger's house and stay, right? And what we saw was, it was true. Like, people actually decided that, okay, if I'm not going to the office anymore, right, I would stay in a shortlet space, right? As long as there is Wi-Fi and as long as there is guaranteed light, I would stay there and work. And we saw the whole, like, our apartments were essentially booked 24/7 throughout the period. And that was one of the most successful deals we did. And that was the first time we ever did any shortlet deal, right? And it just showed that the market, and the market has grown, it just showed that the market is very resilient and you can see the likely returns that can be generated. We also saw like a huge spike last year during there was a report that came out late last year from the, based on the, what do you call it, the diaspora people coming into Nigeria, especially Lagos, and we saw that that was a big deal. Most of the shortlet owners essentially cashed out during the December period, right? Obviously, you don't totally have to index or build your whole shortlet experience around just diaspora people coming during the December period. You're not going to make enough money for the year. But I think it's also a good reminder for opportunities are always happening in this market, and we can actually seize them. So why shortlets? Like I said, the first thing is just the experience, right? Guests prefer shortlets to hotels as they get an enhanced local experience during the stay, right? And it's a simple thing of, I am benefiting from something that I would not otherwise see within a hotel. Hotel is essentially, they just want you to come and stay, right? Obviously, there are some hotels that are now infusing a lot of experience into it. But the typical thing that is just like, okay, go and stay, sleep, wake up tomorrow and leave, right? Some shortlets are even behaving like hotels without thinking of experience, right? So one of the things that and we've managed properties, one of the things that we try to do is to think around the experience. So what are the things that you would gain when you come into a Keble apartment? It could be that you would have, sometimes you can do like suites in front of the door. And just say, okay, this welcome, right? Or a small package to just tell people welcome. And it's an experience. Sometimes you can leave out notes on certain locations around the shortlet space that they would likely want to go out for drinks or go and eat, right? There was an apartment that we partnered with a food vendor, right? And the whole aim was to say, okay, whenever someone is hungry, you don't have to go and wait for maybe a child egg or a Glovo before food comes in. They can literally get the food delivered as quickly as possible with just a phone call. But I think that is the experience that matters, right? And that's what makes some of the apartments, those tiny, tiny things makes the apartments very profitable, right? Obviously, like, there is high income yield, right? When you compare renting an apartment to just long stay apartments to shortlet apartments, there is a huge gap with how much you can make, right? And I think we'll talk about it a few minutes from now. Okay, fantastic. So how much can you really make in a shortlet? The typical timeline or the typical return that you can actually generate in a year is between 10 to 15%, and that's just cash, right? That's just cash being paid. The beautiful thing about the shortlet space compared to like traditional rental apartments is that, one, aside from the higher return, but you're also getting like monthly cash flow as well. So from traditional rents, everyone pays like 1 year rent. That's typically the case. And from my experience with landlords, that money finishes like, in 2 weeks after that rent is paid. Once that money enters, that's gone, right? In terms of the ROI period, how much does it make, or your payback period, how long does it take to make back your money? Typically in 7 to 8 years in a short-term rental apartment. It has actually increased, I think, because asset prices have really gone up. If you bought an asset I'll probably talk about it, but if you bought an asset in Lekki, Kate side for 100 million, it's now 500 million now. So it's like the asset prices have really gone up to the point that it has actually extended the timeline you can make back your money, right? So typically, yes, it's probably between 7 to 8 years at this point in time. For traditional rental, it takes 20 years or more to make back your money, right? The other thing that's important to note, like I mentioned, with rental income from the shortlet space, you're getting paid every single month. And it also changes with the season as well, because some months will be really high. Obviously, some months will be flat as well. Right. So what we do in Keble is that we include something known as dynamic pricing, right? So you see dynamic pricing, if anyone uses like any of the ride-hailing apps, Uber, what do you call it? Uber, Bolt, and the likes, and InDrive, you're seeing that prices change based on certain demands, right? So if demand is high, the price will change slightly higher. If the demand is low, right, the price will drop down. Similar to what we're doing in most of our shortlet apartments, is that once we know that a certain location or a certain timeline is, peak season, we typically adjust the pricing by an extra 20 to 30%. And that is reflective in your cash flow for that month. I think that's important to note. So whenever there is a price increase from a rental income standpoint, you benefit from that growth as well, right? Unlike the traditional rent that is sort of fixed, you're just essentially getting, if it's 500K a year, that's pretty much what you get at this point. However, with shortlet apartments, the cost it's a lot. You're thinking of diesel, you're thinking of manpower, you're thinking of cleaning, you're thinking of a lot of things. And you're also thinking of like making sure that the space is actually intact, so that no one burns your house at the end of the day. One of the things that we do in Keble is that we make sure that we hire a professional management team that is in charge of making sure that things are running in due course, right? The other thing that is also important, insurance is also important. Like I always pitch insurance to any landlord, any co-owner. Insurance is important. So when you're buying assets on the Keble platform, everything is insured. It's really important because we want to make sure that regardless of whatever happens, your assets is intact, right? Yeah. Now, can you truly make 3x your rental income? The short answer is obviously yes. The economics makes sense because you're essentially dealing with two different markets, two different dynamics, right? With the shortlet, it's sort of focused on like day-to-day renting. You're charging per night, right? Compared to traditional rental periods where you're charging, for a whole year. The other thing that you also benefit from the shortlet apartments is that it's fully serviced, right? So almost every single benefit of like 24 hours lights, security, if there is any issue within that particular stay, someone really comes in to settle it immediately. All of that is embedded in the cost, right? And with things coming, there is also the pricing of maintenance as well, because the different people are coming in, you have to keep maintaining the assets, right? So that is really important. So yes, obviously, you're going to make way more money when you earn with, or when you have a shortlet property. But the issue is, people think that they can create like a shortlet apartment anywhere, right? But that is totally false. In fact, one of the things that we do in Keble is that we actually visit the hotels located around all of the assets. We visit the hotels, we visit the shortlet apartments there. We also speak to the property managers as well. So every single asset that you're seeing on the Keble platform, it goes beyond just like the legal work, which we discussed last week, but like, can we really generate the returns that we're seeing, right? And the only way to know that is, one, are there even hotels around here Like, are people making money with the same business model, right? Or are you the first person that is entering the market? And we don't want to be the first people in the market. We are not interested in, proving a point. What we're trying to do is to make sure that the returns are consistent, right? So, like when we launched Nove in Dubai, not in Dubai, in Ibadan, one of the things that we did there was that I think we traveled there twice. We spoke to at least 3 shortlets owners at that point in time. We also spoke to one person that manages like a hospitality space as well, right? So that gave us the insight of, okay, this is where the pricing would be. This is how much we can make. This is how to, if we are thinking of, okay, how do we support the apartments from the train station? Maybe we can structure a ride company that can take people from the train station to the apartments that we own, right? And that's for free. But we baked that into the cost to make sure that constantly you're providing like a really good experience for whoever is booking the apartments. We did the same thing with Buckingham. We are doing the same thing with Declan as well. So each of the apartments that we have, it's not just, there are some places that shortlet will not work. In fact, you're better off just putting it on traditional rent and sleeping well than converting it to a shortlet. The other thing that we also notice is that another thing that is quite expensive is just electricity, right? Electricity and also property management, because people have to be there constantly to make sure that the apartments are intact, right? So it's always important that one, location it's not everywhere in Lagos that you should have a shortlet. It's not everywhere in Nigeria that should have a shortlet as well, right? They're just places that that the returns make sense, and that the bookings will consistently come in every single month. So I think that's important. Yeah. So break-even timelines. Like I mentioned, if you're buying properties in Lagos, right? Typically, if you're looking at a typical rent period, you would see timelines of 30 years, 20 years, and the likes, right? If you're doing a shortlet apartment, you will see timelines of 11 years, 7 years, and the likes, right? So obviously, like with every, in durations, I've seen properties in Enugu that have taken, if you didn't account for the price changes, because sometimes obviously the landlord increased price by 20% after 5 years or so. If you didn't account for that, you would see that properties, before people break even, it probably takes 60 years to break even, right? So I think that is important when you're thinking of how can we sort of selecting the assets that we pick. We do a lot of work to speak to who is on ground. Even right now, we're launching Dubai assets soon, right? We're still speaking to plenty individuals that have done something similar to make sure that it's important that whenever we push it on the platform, like the returns are consistent, right? Now, like we always say, Keble is a combination of like 2 things, right? You're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting the capital appreciation, you're also getting cash flow. And capital appreciation means that you bought an asset for 10 naira. It today is now 20 naira. Right? That is capital that has grown by 10 naira, right? And cash flow is that, that asset you bought for 10 naira, every single month it pays you 1 naira, right? And that is how Keble is structured, to make sure that you're getting the benefit of experiencing what it truly means to own an asset without breaking the bank, right? So some of these assets, I'll probably talk about it in a few minutes, but some of these assets, like the growth is insane, but even the cash flow is also, it's something that you should have in your portfolio. Yeah. So we're going to talk about some of the assets that we have now, which is think Regal, Declan, Buckingham. Okay, we have Ibudura and the likes, right? Across all of these platforms, or across all of these apartments, one of the things that are that you can benefit from is each of them. The average price the minimum price is over 60 million, right? That's the price of the least asset that we have in our portfolio, right? The highest we have right now is probably Declan, with closer to 250 million, right? But what we do is quite simple. What we do is that we say, hey, instead of you to, even if you have 200 million, even if you have, I don't know, 100 million, right? I was speaking to someone that just bought a property for 100 million, furnished everything, so she spends roughly maybe 20 million on that to keep it nice and neat, right? She doesn't even stay in the apartment. It was just a shortlet apartment, right? And if a more efficient way of using that 100 million was to probably spread it across, multiple assets. And there, what would happen is that if certain markets are down, you would benefit from the boom in the other markets. And when I mean markets, I mean like Sule is an example, Lekki Kate is an example, Yaba is an example. All of these markets behave differently at different seasons. You'll be surprised that Sule during 30 December might not be as hyped up as Lekki during 30 December, right? Or if you're having certain events in, Lekki, for example, or even in Sule, it might not be as hyped up as, Lekki at that point in time. But having a spread diversified portfolio really adds more value to it. So we say that even if you don't have the 200 million, you can actually start making payments for that property by owning a slot in that property, right? And you can start with as little as 370K and spread that for 6 months, 6 to 12 months at this point in time. And it really depends on you, right? I know someone that buys multiple slots, and that's fine. You can decide that, okay, in one location, I really like this location, I want to own more slots, and you can still make a flexible payment towards ownership of that one slot. And you can buy more than one slot, that's fine. But I think the benefit of this is that, one, the cost is reduced. Two, it's actually quite safer, right? Three, the returns that you get is almost equivalent to you buying one location, right? And the last thing is that the risk is also reduced as well. So someone that wants to lock in 100 million in one property, or 50 million in one property, or even 20 million in one property, you can do that across 5 different properties in different locations. And I think that makes your real estate portfolio even stronger, right? We also have opportunities like, mortgage payments. So if you're interested in fully owning an apartment and you want access to mortgage payments, we can provide that for you as well. Like obviously, we have case studies, right? And case studies are important. I think we've spoken about it before, but for the sake of people that are still new, one of the important things to note is that this is a Declan residence at Lekki Kate. Beautiful location, fantastic project. But one thing I want to touch on is just on the price increase, right? So sales have gone up since, and this is just year-on-year growth is roughly 20% on average, and these are average numbers. But we looked at this particular location and we noticed something really interesting. Like since 2020 to date, in terms of the actual prices of just picking one particular asset, the property price have gone by over 500%. So what does that mean? It means that if you bought these assets for 10 million, right, in 2020, right, the price of it today is 50, right? And what we're trying to do really is just, there are certain assets that typically do this at this level. But what we're trying to do in Keble is to make sure that these opportunities are much more open and transparent, because no one really shares these numbers at scale, right? And people don't know this until we say that this is what is happening, right? And there is still room for growth. And that's the important thing. So this is just on sales price alone. And we always show the average numbers, which is important to just give you an idea of what's happening. But like from what the assets that we've seen, it's a 5x growth. So 5 times the money that you make, right? The nightly growth has also grown as well. Like I said, 2020, you're seeing 18K per night. Now it's 150K per night, right? And that will only continue to grow as well as demand grows. Lagomeji is another property, right? And the general idea in this particular location is, one, the way we typically frame Alagomeji Yaba is it's the VI of the mainland. So if you missed out on VI, and if you know how VI looks like now, right, that is what Alagomeji is, right? And there's even a project coming on, like a lot of companies are settling here. There is a hotel being built here, which is fantastic. The train station is also very close to this location. There are different organizations just setting up offices here. And for some reason, this is becoming a central location, right? Especially on the mainland. So if you're coming from, let's say on the island down the mainland bridge, the first place you actually meet is Alagomeji, right? So I think that's really important. It's such a central location on the mainland. And what is even driving the prices is just one, a lot of companies are setting up here. Like a lot of, it's becoming insane. I don't even know what's happening here at this point in time, but it's becoming a really good location for you to have something significant here. So if you're thinking of owning something that's fast growing location, you know, on the price at the moment, but still has the potential to grow, I think Buckingham is really suited for that. Like I said, like the growth is also quite similar. But like I think one of the things that I mentioned earlier is like 2020 was a defining period because it actually showed resilience. This is traditional rentals that is being created. I think for a one-bedroom apartment now, it's going for 3 to 4 million at this point. So you could see that here. Yeah, pretty much it, right? That is growing on average of 10 to 20% every single year. That's normal rentals. For shortlets, right, every single year that's growing at the same amount. But the difference with shortlets is that one, the pricing that you make every single day is roughly around 100K to worst case in around 70K per night for a one-bedroom apartment. Yeah. So what are we trying to show? We're trying to show that one, like location really matters. And like I mentioned, we just showed you like a Alagomeji location and mentioned what it's like. Obviously, Lekki Kati is a great location as well. I think the Declan is directly opposite to Nikon Town Estates, which is one of the prestigious estates that we have here in Lagos. So yes, it says these are locations that are in prime areas. These are also C of O assets, right? So there is protection on your own part, right? And one of the additional things to note is that it's not every place that is meant for shortlets. You do need to think deeply around like why this location makes sense, what is driving the price, what is driving the bookings in this particular location, and will you be able to make money, right? And those are the things that allow us to actually touch different locations, right? I think in Keble we have like 2 assets that we don't even want to touch at the moment because we're not so sure of the location, but they are pitching at it as a shortlets asset. It's just we're not yet sure because we've not spoken to as many people as we want to, right? But these are the things that we do in-house to make sure that when we bring out assets, we are bringing out the best possible locations that have the best possible returns and that can provide you with the best flexibility when it comes to building your entire portfolio, right? So I think for now, I just leave it to Chiamaka to handle the rest. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. I'm not saying clapping, though. Please, you should clap for my CEO. Please, clap. Thank you, Jose Maria. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So now we've opened the floor. Oh, I could see everybody is happy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Yes, yes. So now it's your turn. Jose Maria has shared a few light. He has shed light on most of the property, the prices, the rental income. So now it's your turn to drop your questions, ask your questions. If you dropped a question before, don't worry. I have seen at least 2 questions in the chat box, but we still need more questions so we can clarify your doubts. We can erase all those doubts because yesterday during my conversation on the tribe, like I said, if you have not joined my tribe, my community, please go and join. It is in chat box. Go and join. So somebody dropped a question, said something about him being in doubt. He wasn't so sure about Keble. So I believe, I don't know, we might have some people that still have doubt. I just hope you're here so you can drop your questions. Today is one of those days where you can hear from the horse's mouth, and the horse here is my CEO, Jose Maria. So he's going to explain. I will not be able to clarify as much. I will just say a few of the things I know, but he's here to give you better understanding, explain more things to you. So please ask your questions. You can raise your hand if you have a question, or you can just type your question in chat box. I want you living here with clarity, erase all your doubts, and also be confident and just trust Keble, because we are not scammers. We are who we are. We are not scammers. You've heard our testimonials, you've heard from our investors. We are not scammers. Or you see my face. This is not the face of a scammer. I'm a baby girl, so I cannot scam anybody. So we are not scammers, and we're here to clarify and build your trust, build your confidence in us. Okay, so we're going to start with the first question. This is not a question per se. He just said something. So he said, to be honest, this is from Miss Majekodumi. He said, or she said, to be honest, even though I have the app, I have been skeptical about investing. I won't lie. Jose Maria, you want to help us touch upon that?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that I typically will say is when it comes to investing, like it's a matter of choice. I think one of the reasons why we spend a lot of time, having these conversations, and even in the group chat, I don't know if even in our community, we spend a lot of time just educating, is we want you to have as much information as you can to be able to make an informed decision, right? I do say that every single time we have conversations with customers, we're not trying to convince you. I typically would say that, like, your job is not to convince anyone. Your job is just to provide as much facts as possible, and someone makes an informed decision on whether or not to follow through on that, right? And I think it's a matter of time. Like, it's just, we've had customers that have watched Keble for 5 years, and they just started investing this year. Like, they've been around since 2020 or 2021. And it just felt like the right time to do it, right? So I think it's an important thing to obviously take your time, ask as much questions as you want. Obviously, we want to make sure that you invest. I think that's the point of all of this. But the core thing is just to provide you with as much information as you can, and hopefully make that informed decision on your own end. But that's really the best we can do. We're not going to do more than that.
Okay, so next question from Otejiri. It goes, so for a shortlet ownership, you buy it through installments and begin to earn after full ownership? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. You get that?
Yes. So yes,
Okay.
what we do on our own end is, for instance, I know that Declan has roughly, or let's say Buckingham has over 30 slots. At the moment, we have 7 slots sold out already, right? And we just launched it on October 1st. So it's one of like our fastest growing assets at this point. When you own a slot in Declan, I think a slot in Declan is around 3 million, or let's say 4 million, right? That is how much a slot costs. You can decide to pay 4 million at once, or you can decide to spread your payment for 12 months. So that means that, let's say I don't have 4 million to make payment today. I would spread 300K every single month for 12 months to allow me to buy the slots. We provide that flexibility again, because our mantra is to make sure that you own assets with as much ease as possible, without breaking the bank. So that's really where we're focused on at this point in time.
Okay. Another question from Supreme Hatros Invests. What are the profitable potentials on Ibudowura upcoming apartments by Mixta?
Mixta. So yes, the reason why we picked Mr., even though it wasn't in a central location, the attractive nature of the resorts, right? And the spillover effect from the resort as well, right? So, like if you notice, Ibudurura is located in Lakwe Golf Estate. That's the only golf estate in the country, right? It's a very pristine location, right? And one of the things that informed our decision to just pick that location was, one, it was done by a top tier developer. Like, you cannot go wrong with Mr., right? The second thing is that we knew that there was this spillover effect that needed to provide an affordable option for even the resort location. So if you wanted to book a cottage in the Lakwe resort, probably you cost, I think last time I checked, probably 200K plus at this point. And I knew that we knew that there was a lot of spillover effect from that location. We knew that there was a lot of demand needed to close out on the market from that side as well. And Ibudura is really focused on like fully serviced estates. So like there is no even need for thinking of Gen. They don't want you to think of Gen again. Like, it's a fully serviced estate, and they want to manage everything end to end. So there is a really good opportunity there to just take hold of when it comes to Ibudurura that we really like. The only driving force was just that resort. Like, people travel to go there, unlike Buckingham that is just next to your streets. This one, people would literally leave their house and say, I want fresh air. I am going to this location to benefit from that. And I think that's a unique asset on its own and has a unique place in the market. So that's what Ibudura looks like. In terms of like daily rentals, I think we looked at the projections. Every single day is roughly around 80K, which is even lower than the existing pricing around the assets located in that region. But it's still very profitable, right? The other thing that we also mentioned when we are looking at projections is that we actually work with only 9 months. Like, we don't even work with the full year. So all of the projections that we've always said, like we say, oh, this property is going to yield 500K, you're looking at 9 months in the year, right? So there is a good chance of it earning more than that, but we're working with, the projection that makes it feasible. If in case 3 months out of the year, nothing happens, that's pretty much how we structured our own deals. I hope this helps.
Okay. Decent Bunny asks, does Keble buy already built properties or build properties?
Okay, so I'm guessing that he's mentioning, does Keble buy into assets that are currently being constructed or assets that are fully built, right?
Mm-hmm.
We explore both, to be honest. We explore both sides to figure out what works for us. The other thing to note is that if it's already fully built, if the developer is not willing to wait for the 12 months that we've given everybody, that pricing will not work at all. Everyone would have to pay the 4 million at once, right? Or the 10 million at once. So one of the things that we try and do is just to make sure that whatever the developer is looking at, it also matches with the flexibility we are trying to provide into the market, right? So it really depends. It really depends. If the developer is open to waiting for 12, 15 months for payment to be settled, we are open to fully built assets, right? If that's not the case, we would not touch that because we're just wasting both of our times if he's not willing to wait for that long. Yeah.
Okay. Ayola asked, how much is 1-bedroom apartment price at Alagomeji, and what is the return on investment?
Yeah, great. So the typical thing that you would see is when you're buying through Keble, let me see if I can find something that I can share. I can't find it. Okay, so the typical thing that you see when you're buying through Keble, you're not just buying like a bare apartment, you're buying a fully furnished apartment, right? So the average price that you're probably going to see in the market is around 90 to 100 million plus, right? This was actually the price of 3-bedroom apartments in Alagomeji 2023. A 3-bedroom apartment in Alagomeji 2023 is the same price of a 1-bedroom apartment now in 2025. So that's like, if you think around pricing that way, you just know that this location is exploding, right? And that's really what I know. Some people that are just, there's a very popular tech bro that is buying a lot of units in Alagomeji. I won't even mention the name, but he stays in one apartment and he's just buying entire units because it is a very interesting location to just have in your portfolio, right? From a monthly standpoint, one of the things that we looked at was how many shortlets are in this location, right? We looked at hotels. We also looked at the bookings as well, the likely demographic of the customers that would actually book a typical shortlet. So what we've seen so far that works really well, especially in Alagomeji, is like bridal showers work really well here. We also see like corporate workers work well here, especially in locations that have Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi is really important. Like, it's something that they call upon to say, oh, do you guys have Wi-Fi? We also see parties go well. I'm not really the biggest fan of having apartments for parties, and that's why we are typically focusing on locations like 1-bedroom apartment studio, because it's not even suited for parties at all. No one is going to have a party in a studio apartment, right? So typically you need a 3-bedroom or even more to have a really good experience for a party. But our core focus is just focused on like, hey, this location, would we get like regular customers? Would we get customers from travels? I think one of the locations we partnered with a travel agency to make sure that we had like a good pipeline of customers whenever they're coming into Lagos. So those are the things that add up to make a particular location very profitable. So yes, that's the typical price line that you see here.
Okay. Jamil Bello asked, he asks, there is outright payment option and direct bank transfer in your app. But whenever I select those options, an error message pop up. Is it that those options are not yet activated?
I think those options are activated. I probably need to check on that. Can someone share the customer support WhatsApp number there so that he can actually reach out to someone so we can help with that? I mean, I think that's something that we can have like a quick customer support conversation on and sort it out.
Okay. So somebody's raising their hand. Ayodeji Sheun Dada. Please unmute yourself so you can ask your question.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you for the succinct expose. I've actually been following Keble for a while. I've been following Keble for over 2 years, if not 3. And I think to a large extent, you've convinced me on credibility, which is the first thing I look out for in any investment enterprise I want to get myself into. Okay, not to bore you, I also have a bit of clarification I want to seek. Let's say, I don't know, is it do you list your properties at when you just find for instance, the land that you want to build on, or after it's been fully built and stuff? Why am I saying this? If, for instance, you're listing it when it's still at development stage, and I put my money into it, for instance, maybe I decide to pay the whole thing at once, am I going to wait until when the property is fully developed before I start expecting return on investment? Maybe, for instance, this co-ownership thing, do I have to wait until maybe you need because we were talking about if you purchased from a property that is already furnished and the developer is not ready to wait for the 12 months and things like that, means that you get properties and you wait until probably when people pay money or something before the profit sharing and stuff like that comes into play. I just want to understand the dynamics around there. If I finish paying my money this month, when should I wait to get my return in investment and whatever it is? I'm currently subscribed to your Nov 2, I think so. I was supposed to come into Nov 1 then, but for one reason or the other, my funds were not liquid then. I just want to have clarification on stuff like that. I believe you understand what I'm trying to refer to.
100%, yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Chao. Yes. So typically, right, if the property is still under construction, you would have to wait. I think that's a simple thing on that front. So, and let me give you context, much more practical context around it. We know right now that most of the assets that we have right now are still under construction, most of them. So you mentioned Nove, for example. Nove is expected to kick off by Q2 of next year, which is one. So that's when handover is scheduled. Regal, if you invested in Regal, the Sule property, same time, Q2 next year. Someone asked for Buckingham and Declan, why did they have a longer duration, right? It's because it's just a massive project. Like the bigger the project, the longer it takes, right? So that's pretty much. Buckingham is essentially building like a whole experience. The estate is building like an entirely new experience, rivaling. I think if you guys know, there's another estate that is very close. It just crossed my mind now. Hopefully I remember. But like they're trying to build like a proper estate. So it will take time. I think the scheduled timeline is August next year, right? So yes, you would have to, even if you complete the full payment, what we're doing right now is to make sure that there are discounts for outright payments, because that's important based on the feedback we're getting. But you would have to wait until the project is fully completed. Now, why do we trust the developers that are doing this? Because we don't really work with all developers at this point. We're very selective. The first thing we look out for is obviously that they have to be building in this location multiple times. So, for example, the developer that is building Buckingham, we've done at least 5 different deals with them in the last 5 years, right? They've done multiple deals in this particular location multiple times. So this is not the first structure that they are doing, and this is not the first time they are doing something like this, right? So we try to look at those things to give us an informed view on whether to pick this developer and whether to pick this project as well. Right? So just to answer the question, like in very clear terms, yes, you would have to wait. Each project has a timeline of roughly 12 months. So it sort of tallies out with the timeline of you making payments. Some of them are probably going to be launched before you even complete your payments. I know that Nove will be launched before most people complete their payments. I know that Riga will be launched before most people complete their payments. But for larger scale projects, Ibudura will also be launched before most people complete their payments, right? But for larger scale projects, it will probably almost be the same timeline from when you're completing your payment to when the project is also completed as well. So that's what we've sort of matched up in terms of timeline.
All right, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think this is a vital part of what people should be aware of, and you should probably put up while people are assessing these options, because I can't imagine putting up maybe 10 million naira, and for the next 1 year, I'm not going to get 1 naira on it as returns, and I'm not informed until maybe sometimes along the line. I think that's something that should be put up on your stuff, so that when we are accessing it, we have a full picture of what we are expecting. For instance, I would be more comfortable with when I have all the rounded information. Maybe I should say it's part of due diligence on my part, but then it makes more sense when I understand that I would have to wait until second quarter before the property is fully ready, and maybe third quarter before I start earning anything on it or stuff. Just an advice.
That's a good feedback. Thank you very much. I think what we did was, I think we added it to the document, but again, that's why we have these conversations here, because a lot of people have questions. So we're here to actually, make sure, but I think that's a valid feedback. We would add that there. Also, I think the important thing to add to the flow of even the payments is, I do know that for most of the assets, like for example, you mentioned Nove. If you started paying for Nove today, like Nove 2 today, right? The property will be ready before you finish your payments. If you're doing like a 12 months timeline sort of structured payments, right? I think also for Ibudura, most people, the assets will be ready before they finish their payments. The developer is really not waiting for you to finish the payment for the assets to be done, right? So I think in terms of timeline and structures, it sort of aligns to everybody. But we want to make sure that, again, almost every single thing that we've put out is in averages, and we always bake the time to make sure that we are suited for that. I think for Buckingham as well, Buckingham is a large scale project, to be honest. And also Declan is also a large scale project as well. So yes, they will take time, right? We're launching Dubai asset. There's one we're launching for Dubai. That one is taking 3 years to build. That is a 3-year project, like long-term project on its own, right? So I think some of these assets take more time, right? The larger the project size, the larger the timelines will take to sort of complete. But the goal is that once it's completed, things starts rolling in from there. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay. Chukwebuka, I believe that Sose Marie has answered your question already. So we have a question from Chinaza. She said, do you have a portfolio of all the packages on Keble?
I think, I don't know, probably need more detail on, like, more the question needs to be expanded a little bit more for me to understand. Are you asking for like a document or like a place to view all the packages for Keble? Is that something that's just to help? If Chinaza is here, you can speak up, so be able to answer.
Yes, something like that. Maybe if it's on the website or if it's a PDF package that has like everything that Keble has to offer.
Fantastic. Yes, you can actually download the app and you'll be able to see all the information there, right? So all the different options are available. So I don't know, someone can help with sending the link for the app so that Chinaza can be able to view that on his own end. Then I think the phone number, you can reach out to the phone number there and we'll send you the link immediately. Yeah.
Okay. I guess you've answered this question already. If I make full outright payments for a property slot, when should I be expecting ROI?
Yeah, once the project has to be up and running, to be honest. So we have to make sure that there's also like we're going to talk a bit more. Once I know that we'll have a session with the Nove people first, and we'll also have session with people that have actually bought into Nove. We'll have a session with Nove people. I'll also have a session with Ibudura people on the ramping up period as well. So the time when they'll start seeing, okay, we are furnishing the place, we are making sure that assets are, and we are putting the assets in maybe on Airbnb, they'll be carried along on that process. So yes, that will be, they'll be informed to end on how that is going on their own end for each of the assets.
Okay, so Ayola, you were raising your hand, or you're raising your hand. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
All right, thank you. Just Maria. My own is what the question the other young man that asked that when he was asking for an investor. Yeah. Let me tell you the way it works. That means we are not really encouraging people to pay once. I felt the discount for making full payment. If I put it on a scale side by side, it's not sufficient enough for me to pay finish when I know that this project is not ready. Let me give you a very good example. You make mention of 4 million. I have other asset class that I can put my 4 million in 30 days. I will start earning something. So what will now going to be my reason for putting that amount of money when the project is not ready? That means when the project is ready, tell me, let me jump on the bandwagon, rather than for me putting my money for like a period of 12 months when I'm still waiting for the project to be ready. I think you actually need to look at that and use it to work on your model. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. So let me give you a typical example. And I think one of the things we worked on was even on the pricing. We've adjusted the pricing for people that want to make outright payments so that they will pay at a discount, right? So that's something that we're working on. However, if you wanted to even buy the entire building today, it will not be ready when it's, for instance, now if you're buying the property for 100 million, let's say it's 1-bedroom apartment, when it's fully ready, nobody will sell that asset for 150 million to you at that point in time. I think we saw a property in Sulere. I think that was going for 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom. The price in which we invested in that asset was roughly 38 million. Right now it's going for 60 to 80 million, right? So you have to be ready. And again, it's just a matter of, are you ready to meet at that price point, right? To be able to pay that payment. And that is a question for whoever the investor is. But we will not go back and say, okay, we are ready to be bought in at this price at 38 million. It's going for 60 to 80 million at that point in time. That's the price that we're willing to sell at that point in time. So I think if you're also looking at the cost implication, that's where the conversation needs to be looked into from the model perspective. But what we can do on our own end is, one, to make sure that if you're an outright investor, you would be incentivized from a discount, maybe a 10%, 5% discount, to allow you to say, okay, this makes sense for me to make a payment and lock in at a higher price, right? If you're buying multiple slots, we're also creating that as well. So if you're buying like maybe 2 or 3 slots in a particular location, we've added that as well to some, I think, to Declan, to see how people can be more incentivized to actually buy more slots as well. So those are the things we are currently looking at. But generally, like if you wanted to buy Declan, right, today, the price of Declan right now is 200 million. No one will sell it at 200 million in the next 12 months. It's just not going to happen at that point. So I think those are the things that we need to even consider when we're looking at these asset prices and when to jump in and when to leave. Also, I would mention that real estate is a different asset class on its own. Yes, you can actually make more money in other places. I keep saying it, like, I have a portfolio in cryptocurrency, in stock markets and everything. I would keep saying that, see, when it comes to, you need to have fiscal assets. Like there are financial assets and there are fiscal assets. You need to have some location that allows you to have something in the fiscal world that is just generating some cash returns on your own end, right? So when you're thinking about diversifying, I think it's also important to have that at the back of your mind. I hope that helps.
Okay. Kayode Dada asks, are you still going to have a project like the Palm Grove Avenue? And I want to ask if that type of ownership is for life, aside the profit that comes after the first 4 years of investment.
I think the Palm Grove is closed out, but I know that just to answer the question on that front, yes, the assets are for life. The co-ownership assets are for life. The land assets are for life. We do have projects that are more time stamped. So you see that, okay, the duration is like 30 months or 25 months and the likes. But like when we're talking about these assets that you're holding, you're essentially benefiting from the asset for life. And you can, I spoke to a customer the other day and she's essentially building out a trust fund, right? And some of these assets are baked into that trust fund, right? So if you're thinking around like something that you can start owning now without, and you know that the price point will obviously keep growing, right? I think this is suited for that purpose very nicely.
Okay. I guess this should be the last question. This is 8:22 p.m. already. Mary, she asked, can you reiterate the explanation on owning a property through mortgage in terms of returns? Does Keble sort of work with the owner on that?
Yes, we partnered with Mr. and MRIF. So for people that don't know, like ARM is one of the biggest investors in Keble, and they are the ones that are the fund managers of the federal government's fund for mortgage payments. And the mortgage payment that we're seeing around online is like 9.75%. If you went to the bank today and you wanted to get mortgage, the rates you probably be getting is between, on a good day, between like 25 to 30% plus, right? I don't know what the rates at this point in time, but like that is the typical range that you'll be seeing in the market. What we're doing is that we're saying that, hey, you do not have to get the assets for, for 30%. You can make the interest that you can lock in is at 9.7%, which is important. Now, how does the mortgage work? Essentially, if the property is worth 100 million, right? You have to bring out 20% of that money from your own end. And the government will bring out the 80%, so the 80 million. So that 100 million goes to the developer. Now, you have to pay back the government the 80 million over 20 years, right? So I know someone that is using the property for shortlets, or they're renting it out, and they're using the proceeds from that property to pay the mortgage. That's something you can explore, right? But the sole aim of the asset itself is for you to lock in at a price in a really good location and allow the government to settle it while you spread the payment for as long as you want. In terms of the process, if you're interested in getting a mortgage for, I think the only one that we have mortgage for right now is at Lakwe Resort location. If you're interested in the assets, you can send us an email at hello@keble.co, or you can send us a message on the WhatsApp there. I think the WhatsApp number is there, and we'll process you. It takes 48 hours to be processed to know if you're eligible to even access the mortgage, because we have to check if you're the right person for the month. Not everybody will be accepted, to be honest, but it probably takes like 48 business days for it to be checked, and if that's good, you can now make the down payment of 20%. The other thing that Keble does is that you can spread that payment for 6 months. So even if you don't have the 20 million, you can spread the 20 million for 6 months and be able to make your 20% down payment to the bank, and they'll be able to process that for you. But yeah, that's typically how it works for now.
Okay, that was our last question, and the conversation tonight lasted for a very long time. What a beautiful conversation. So a quick recap, because I guess I saw a few people join in later. A quick recap. We talked about how shortlets have grown from vacation rentals into a $1 billion market in Nigeria. We even compared traditional rentals with shortlets, and we also saw how income can double or even triple. Jose Maria, our CEO, walked us through specific Keble properties designed to help you tap into this trend. Clap for Jose Maria. And we also heard from real investors who are already reaping the benefits. So the big takeaway this night should be, shortlets are not just a trend. They are a smarter way to build income and wealth in real estate, especially in an inflation-heavy economy like ours. I believe tonight's session has been very good, has been very insightful, and I believe we learned one or two things from this session. And I am very, very grateful to Jose Maria for his explanation, for his insightful words, and also for every one of us that attended, and also those of us that asked questions. So what's next? Our Instagram, our LinkedIn, our Twitter handle is on the chat box. Please follow us there. Also, our community, join us also, please. I'm waiting for you. My name is Amaka, on behalf of the Keble team. Thank you for spending your evening with us. Tonight was not just about numbers. It was about imagining what's possible future shortlets hold for us. as Nigerians and those in diasporans too. We look forward to helping you start, grow, and win in real estate. You can send us a mail if you have any more questions at hello@Keble. And we also have our customer support number. It's also in the chat box. It's pinned. So like I said, follow us on all our socials and also join the tribe community for more conversations like this. Thank you and good night. Bye, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Bye.